Standardized testing is making a comeback in college admissions. Yale is reversing a pandemic-era policy that did away with SAT and ACT requirements for applicants, joining Dartmouth, MIT, and several other top colleges. The universities say that the removal of the testing requirements put low-income students at a disadvantage, but critics say the opposite is true. GBH News higher education managing editor and correspondent Kirk Carapezza has been covering this story closely. He joins me to discuss, along with Natasha Warikoo, a professor of sociology at Tufts University, which, I should note, has extended its testing optional policy since 2026. Welcome to you both.
Good to be here.
Thank you for having me. Well, let me ask you this, Kirk, we could come out and ask this question: does standardized testing at admissions help or hurt low-income students? We were talking about this a little bit before we started taping.
Yeah, it depends who you ask, right? So these policies will affect prospective students for the class of 2029. And these colleges, I think it's important to step back and to look at why these schools went test optional first, right? It was during COVID. You couldn't physically take the test. So this is a way to level the playing field. Also, for context, this is around the time that the Supreme Court ruled against Harvard and the University of North Carolina and said that they can't consider race in admissions, right? So the colleges at first said, these tests can signal a family's income. High-income families tend to have higher test scores. But the schools, Dartmouth, now Yale, and there's a study out of Harvard that found high scores from less advantaged students can signal high potential in college.
And Natasha, you write extensively on this topic in terms of standardized testing and low-income students and the effects basically in the system.
Yeah, I think this issue is incredibly complicated, and I think, anyone who says, definitely we need the test or definitely absolutely no test, I'm a little skeptical. And I say this because when you look at the data, it points in all kinds of directions. So it's true that, at some colleges that they've looked at their data and there are some low-income students who didn't give their test scores that may have gotten them in. On the other hand, we also know that when there is a testing requirement and a student looks at that band and says, oh, well, the 25th to 75th percentile are these scores that are way beyond what I achieved, forget it, I'm not even going to apply. I think that also happens. So which of those, they balance each other out, and we don't really know how students are going to behave when a policy changes. And so I think it's important to keep that in mind, and that, that there is no perfect solution. MIT went back to the test. Caltech went, Caltech, like the MIT of the West, went in the opposite direction, and they actually said, we are not going to look at test scores. Even if you submit it, we will not look at it, because we have found, they said that in their data, they found very little difference in terms of first-year test grades in between people who submitted and who didn't, and by subsequent years, those students did just as well. So, I really think, anyone who says there's a simple solution to this, I think, is missing part of the story.
And there's a spectrum, right? There's test optional, and then there's test blind, like you described in California. But then there's also test flexible, which is actually what Yale did, right? So they're requiring students to submit their scores, but you can also submit AP exams instead. Now, critics will say that still benefits high-income families, because who tends to take AP exams? Right. It's rich families, and in our country, that tends to be white and Asian people.
And they have the ability to do the pre-test, and they can
hire,
afford the tutors.
Hire tutors, There's all kinds of advantages that are baked into the system.
Yeah, well, how does it affect, then, I guess, the diversity of the school population? Because that's something that, has been top of mind to a lot of universities.
And we're talking about two things, right? We're talking about economic diversity, and the schools are really the schools that are going back to requiring these test scores are saying that this will lead to greater economic diversity on campuses that lack it. When it comes to racial diversity, I think it's up in the air. And like Natasha pointed out, if the students are less likely to apply because there's a testing requirement, then the applicant pool itself will be less diverse.
Yeah, will you speak more on that in terms of how could this affect, the diversity of the student population, let's say, if we're going by race or even by income?
Yeah, I think the bottom line is we don't know, and that's the reality, right? We don't know how this is, because we don't know how this is going to affect student behavior, right? So in an ideal world, yes, students would have perfect information. Colleges would tell them exactly, if you live in these particular neighborhoods with this median household income, you need this score to be taken seriously. But, it's much more holistic, and, they're worried about being sued because of their recent affirmative action decisions. So there's a lot of kind of opacity. And I think, but I think this idea that we can kind of get it right. And I think the other thing to think about is that, when the colleges are saying, well, we want to know which of those low-income students to admit, and the SAT will help us, my answer to that is admit both of them. Admit all of them, because, these colleges have done a pretty poor job of admitting low-income students, poor students, underrepresented minorities, even middle-class students. And so, the reality is that they have, they're spending so much per pupil, and they have the resources that, even for that student who maybe has a low SAT score, with the right resources, they can be brought up to speed as well. And so I think we need to be expanding opportunity and thinking about ways to do that, not kind of differentiating and making these micro decisions based on the SAT.
Yeah, well, I mean, my question is, should they be worried about lawsuits after some of these provisions start slowly coming,
Perhaps. I mean, we sat in on when we covered the trial here in Boston in the Harvard case in affirmative action. I mean, they pointed to the test scores saying, like, oh, look, these Asian students who scored, on average this on the SAT, they were held to a different standard. So by dropping that qualitative measure, it might prevent lawsuits. But Yale, the admissions director at Yale said, threats of lawsuit should not change how we operate.
Do you see this as just one thing that we could see in higher ed in terms of changes post-COVID? Like, these are some of the things that we put in place as a triage method during COVID. Do we see other things sort of rolling away from that?
I think so. I think it's important to keep in mind that, we have, these are just 4 very selective colleges that we're talking about, right? 80% of colleges in this country are still test optional, right? That's 1,800 schools. So the admissions process has become so convoluted, right? And there's so little transparency. And I think the students that I interview and their school counselors are just really confused about what to do, right? Should you submit test scores? Should you not? But I think it's important to keep in mind that there are so many schools, and most of them would love to be on your short list, right? These schools we love to talk about the highly selective or the highly rejective colleges, but most schools are admitting more than half of the students who apply.
Natasha, do you think that this is going to impact the way that families choose colleges, where they'll say, great, there's no test requirement here, we're going to apply there, versus having to go through this process again that maybe previous generations really, at least myself, had PTSD from. Right? Like,
you didn't enjoy it?
No.
I don't think anybody enjoys it. I mean, I think it will, when there are differences in terms of what colleges are looking at, it will affect people. Someone who's a good test taker will be like, oh, well, that might advantage me. And someone who's not a great test taker will be like, you know what, I won't apply to Dartmouth. I won't apply to Yale. I think that's okay. I think we need to stop worrying about, whether, student doesn't apply to Yale. If that student is a high-achieving student, okay, they'll apply to Harvard or they'll apply to Tufts. And it's not going to make a whole lot of difference. I think we really need to focus on the reality that there are so many wonderful and amazing and aspirational young people in this country, and they all deserve an excellent education at a place that is welcoming to them, and that, if they have not had all of the educational opportunities that some of their peers had, that their college is going to help them get up to speed. And I think that's what we need to be focusing on, and not, SAT, no SAT, essay, all of these things can be gamed and advantages some people and disadvantages others. So, I kind of think, let's see what happens. Colleges are going to do different things. Families are going to make different choices, and that's all okay.
And there's so much focus on getting into college, and there's not much focus on what do you get out of it.
Yeah.
Right? And all the surveys show in this moment when the American public is so skeptical of higher education and is questioning the value of these degrees. There's a great Gallup survey that came out a number of years ago, but basically said that those alumni who said college was worth it shared two things in common. One, they worked on a project for more than a semester, and two, they had at least one professor, just one, who they think cared about them, and that's it. That's the Venn diagram. If you have those two things, then you had a good college experience.
It's interesting to me because sometimes this test, or most of the time, this test is considered the barometer of how good of a high school education you got, when in the end, it doesn't necessarily reflect that.
Yeah. It reflects so many things. You know, are you a good test taker? Do you? What do you do under pressure? How, you know, these particular.
You mentioned about gaming. This,
Right. I mean, can you memorize certain
did you
words?
have access to certain tutoring? I mean, and so it's not. But there is no perfect measure. I think we should get away from this idea that, okay, well, the SAT is flawed, but the essay is better. You know, the essay has its own, you know, issues or extracurriculars. And so we have to kind of allow young people to kind of showcase whatever they're good at. Let them, you know, submit that. So, you know, I think in the end, we'll have to see what happens, you know, and we're going to, I think a lot of people are watching closely. This is the first post-affirmative action cohort that's going to be admitted. I'm going to be looking really closely to see, you know, how are these colleges doing? Are we able to continue to provide access, you know, access in terms of underrepresented minorities on these campuses? And then, you know, think about the SAT after that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is certainly top of mind for lots of folks because I know a lot of my friends, they had their kids tour during spring break that just wrapped up. So here we go. All right, Kirk, Carapezza, and Natasha Warikoo, thank you so much for being with us.